This is Cast of Wonders, the young adult fiction podcast featuring stories of the fantastic. Welcome. Episode 150 for December 28th, 2014. You're listening to Little Wonders, our thematic flash fiction collections. This week, we bring you our final episode of 2014 and lucky number 150, a pair of stories inspired by the season of goodwill. Our first offering is The Secret Ingredient Is by Amalia Harrington. Amalia is a writer and librarian who is making her first forays into publishing fiction. If this story's any indication, I hope we hear from her again soon. She adores fantasy, science fiction, and other speculative work, as well as historical fiction and nonfiction. When she isn't busy writing, she's sewing, knitting, cooking, or otherwise trying to keep her hands busy. The story is served up for you by Anne Louise Fortune, an actor and performer from Manchester. She also finds time to write scripts and the occasional audio drama and, yes, fan fiction, as well as taking photographs at geek events for Starburst magazine. On Sundays, Anne can be found being the eternally exasperated producer AI for the Bookworm podcast, a part of Fab Radio International. You can also find her on Twitter and follow her adventures as she conquers her fear of heights by learning aerial acrobatics. Turn down the lights and grab a hot drink. It may be snowing outside, but there's plenty of cozy feelings in these small packages.
The Secret Ingredient Is by Amalia Harrington. Susan stirred the pot of soup, frowning. Hunger was supposed to be the best seasoning, but the jar was empty and there was no time to prepare more. Besides, Great Aunt would hate it if they served something like that to guests. Stepping away from the stove, Susan scanned the shelves yet again. There was salt, garlic, peppercorns, nutmeg, allspice. Nothing spoke to her. Rocking back on her heels, she tried to think of what Great Aunt would do. The first order of business would be to run to the garden to pull up the biggest, freshest and most colourful vegetables and see how many eggs she could muster from the quail. Once that was done, Great Aunt would run to the shopping district to wrangle an excellent price for smoked tea. She would follow this victory by purchasing fish that still smelled of the water and filling her basket with bread still steaming from the oven. Once home, no burner on the stove went idle as Great Aunt chopped, steamed, steeped and braised every dish to perfection. The tea was always just strong enough, while the food was as warm or chilled as it needed to be. But Great Aunt was flat on her back with the flu and in no condition to do anything more than sip hot lemon tea. She looked so withered and forlorn that Susan dared not crush her by cancelling luncheon. Their guests would have to make do with watery soup and days-old bread. Susan's shoulders slumped, even as she knew what Great Aunt would say. Putting a hand on her shoulder and pretending it was Great Aunt's, she recited, "As long as it was made with..." The words faded away as realisation dawned. Racing towards the cupboard, she flung the door open and made a dive for the seldom-used shortcut spices Great Aunt had in abundance, cursing Susan with choices. Pulling out shaker after shaker, Susan lined up the little jars next to the stove. Exposure to sunlight didn't make them any easier to choose. Why couldn't Great Aunt be more articulate? There was romantic, naturally. While perfect in a cake for a sweetheart, it had no place in a group meal. Susan wasn't sure what agape was, and so let it alone. The third made Susan's ears burn and her nerve endings melt. Her arms ached to hide the jar under a towel. Using unrequited would simply be disastrous. That left familial and platonic. Susan gave the soup a few more stirs as she pondered. If it was just for her and great aunt, then she'd use the first in a heartbeat. That didn't mean it would go well between good friends and acquaintances. Platonic felt safe, but she wasn't sure if it was enough. After so many years at the table together, it was hard to tell. Staring at the final shakers, Susan flipped the lids open, took a deep breath, and grabbed one in each hand.
Amalia told us this story came about in a challenge to write fantasy tales in less than 500 words. Food and kitchens need very little explanation, making them an ideal choice for a setting and theme that's short on word count. She was also amused by the phrase, "the secret ingredient is," popular in cooking shows. Combining the expression with a fondness for wordplay helped her come up with this cozy story. Speaking of cozy, like peppermint and cocoa, our second story makes a perfect pairing. Jamie Lackey's Christmas Lights. Jamie lives in Pittsburgh with her husband and cat. Her fiction has appeared in Daily Science Fiction, Beneath Ceaseless Skies, and the Stoker Award-winning After Death. She's a member of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America. Her short story collection, One Revolution, is available on Amazon, and we'll have links to her Facebook page, website, and Twitter in the show notes. She's currently editing the anthology Triangulation: Lost Voices, which is open for submissions through the end of February. Christmas Lights by Jamie Lackey. Jenna stared out of the car window and watched snowflakes cling to the glass. They glistened like tiny strings of Christmas lights. She wished she could be like them, bright and beautiful and free. "I think we're lost," her mother said. Jenna had felt lost since they pulled out of the driveway, leaving Grandma and Grandpa's warm house filled with presents and cookies. She didn't answer. "Is this the silent treatment?" her mother asked. Jenna shrugged. "I just couldn't be there," her mother said, "with all the lights and forced smiles. She even made his favorite cookies." The catch in her voice would have made Jenna feel guilty if it wasn't so common. "You could have left me," Jenna said. "That's not fair. No one wants to be alone on Christmas." Jenna sighed. She wanted to spend Christmas with a tree and music and lights. Home was dark and cold. Jenna spotted a sign, "Christmas trees, entrance ahead." Christmas carols drifted in the wind. "Let's stop there." Her mother sighed and pulled into the dirt entrance. "We're just getting directions, not getting a tree. I don't want a Christmas tree, you know that." Jenna crossed her arms tight across her chest. She knew. Just like she knew that what she wanted didn't matter. "You folks looking for a tree?" a man in orange overalls asked. "We just need directions," Jenna's mother said, her voice tight and cold. Jenna hopped out of the car. "I want to look at the trees." "Jenna, get back in the car." "She'll be fine," the man winked at Jenna. "These trees can grant wishes. You just wander till you find the one that feels right," the tree man said. He turned to her mother. "Where are you heading?" Snow crunched under Jenna's boots. It collected on her eyelashes and reflected invisible colored lights. She wandered, looking at the trees. Her mother hated Christmas, and Jenna understood, or at least she tried. Losing Uncle Mark hadn't been that big of a deal for her. She'd only met him once, and last year was a long time ago. But her mother had loved him, and Jenna just wished that she'd act like she loved her, too. The air smelled like pine, but she caught a hint of Grandma's orange spice cookies. She wasn't cold, not even when the wind blew snow into a glowing whirlwind that whipped her scarf away. It fluttered in the air, then drifted onto a tree. As soon as Jenna saw it, she loved it. It was tall and green and perfectly shaped with flat, dark needles. "I wish I could take you home with me," she whispered. All of her wishes curled together in the center of her chest. She just wanted to belong somewhere, just wanted to be important. Uncle Mark's favorite cookies, the orange spice, were Jenna's favorites too. She wondered why her mother never remembered that. Her fingers glowed as she reached towards the tree, and the smell of cookies curled around her. When her bare fingers touched the cold needles, she exploded into 1,000 tiny lights. She settled into the branches and clung like the trapped snowflakes. She was part of the tree, part of a perfect Christmas. She could hear the carols clearly now. Her mother wandered by. "I don't really have space for a tree," she said. She shook her head. "Was I looking for something else?" "Just directions," the tree man said. She pulled Jenna's scarf from her tree. After a moment, she wrapped it around her neck and walked away. "Thanks again. I should get back to my folks. I don't want to be alone on Christmas." For me, December is about the little things. Peppermint hot chocolate, the crunch of snow under your boots, holding the door open for someone with their arms full of shopping, or lazy afternoons spending time with the people you care about. We wish all of you a happy and peaceful season of goodwill, however you choose to celebrate. Each year in January, we here at Cast of Wonders take the month away from producing new episodes to catch our breath, recharge our batteries, and plan out the year ahead. Last year, we reran several of our favorite episodes, and I'm pleased to announce we'll be doing so again next month with our staff picks for 2014. Barry, Alan, Jeff, and I will each pick our favorite story from the year's episodes and tell you a bit about why. We hope you'll join us. If you've enjoyed this story, please lend a hand in supporting podcast fiction. Leave us and this story a review on iTunes or on our Facebook page, and share the episode with others. You can find us on Twitter, too. We're at Cast of Wonders. And please, in this holiday season, consider making a donation to Cast of Wonders via the PayPal links available on our site. All of our donations cover our story costs and pay for bandwidth. Every bit helps, and you have our heartfelt thanks for helping us to keep on bringing you the best in audio fiction week after week. Cast of Wonders is a production of Wolfsbane Publishing and is brought to you by the creative team of Barry J. Northern, our publisher and artist, Alan Sale, our audio producer, and I remain, as always, your humble editor and host, Marguerite Kenner. Our episodes are released under our Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Share it, but don't change it. Our Little Wonders theme, The Verses, is by Alexi Nov from musicalley.com. Thanks for listening.